זמן עבר, past tense. And now let's see how we conjugate Paal verbs, regular Paal verbs in the past tense. So first of all, let's refresh our memories and see what is the guideline to conjugating verbs in the first and the second person. Ani always ends with T. Ata always ends with Ta. At always ends with T. Anachnu always ends with Nu. Atem always ends with Tem. Aten always ends with ten. So what we see is that the ending, the conjugation suffix in the past tense, will be very similar to the ending of the personal pronoun itself. Third person pronouns conjugation. Who will always follow the name of the binyan. He will have a hey as a suffix, and the letter standing before the letter hey will have an a vowel, a kamatz. Hem and hen will always have an u suffix. So having that in mind, let's start finding the reference point for each verb that we conjugated in the present tense so far. So, lilmod, to learn. The verb lilmod contains the root letters lamed, mem, daled. And as we know, we're talking about a pa'al verb. So in order to find the reference point, we need to replace the letters pei, ayin, lamed with the respective root letters lamed, mem, daled, and find the reference point, what he did. Hu lamad. It follows the sound of the binyan, pa'al. Hu lamad, and this is the reference point. This is what we start with. Hu lamad. Liskor, to remember. Liskor contains the root letters zayin, chaf, resh, and we need to keep in mind that the dagesh on the chaf drops, and we will apply those root letters into the name of the binyan and find the reference point in the form of the conjugation for third person singular masculine. So it will follow the sound of the binyan and it will be hu zachar. Hu zachar. He remembered. And this is the reference point. This is what we start with. Livdok, to check. Livdok contains the root letters bet, dalet, kuf. The binyan is pa'al. And we will apply the root letters into the name of the binyan, pa'al, and we'll find out what he did, the reference point, the conjugation for third person singular masculine. And we need to keep in mind that since the letter bet becomes the first letter of the word, it will receive a dagesh. So the reference point will be hu badak. Hu badak, it is the reference point, it follows the sound of the binyan. Livgosh, to meet. Livgosh contains the root letters pei, gimel, shin. We will apply them into the name of the binyan, and we'll find the reference point, and we will need to keep in mind that when we're conjugating the verb, in the past tense, the letter pei becomes the first letter of the word. Therefore, from hu pa'al will be hu pagash. Hu pagash. And this is the reference point. This is what we start with. Lilbosh, to wear. Lilbosh contains the root letters lamed, bet, shin. The binyan is pa'al. We will do the same. We will apply the root letters into the name of the binyan and find the reference point in the form of the conjugation for third person singular masculine. And also we will need to keep in mind that lilbosh has a dagesh on the bet in its infinitive, but when we're conjugating verbs of pa'al, the dagesh will drop on the second root letter, so it will become hu lavash. He wore something. And this is the reference point. This is what we start with. Ligdol, to grow up. Ligdol contains the root letters gimel, daled, lamed, and the binyan is pa'al. We will apply gimel, daled, lamed into the name of the binyan, and we will find what he did. הוא גדל. He grew up, and this is the reference point. לכתוב, to write. לכתוב contains the root letters chaf, taf, bet. The binyan is pa'al. We will apply the root letters into the name of the binyan. And let's keep in mind that chaf will become the first letter of the word, so it will receive a dagesh. Therefore, hu katav. And it's the reference point. hu katav. First and second person pronouns conjugation. So let's start with the verb lilmod, the verb to learn. So hu lamad is our reference point. This is what we found. Ani, as we remember, always ends with T. Ata ends with ta. At ends with t. Anachnu ends with nu. Atem ends with tem. Aten ends with ten. So we see that hu lamad is the reference point, so what is left to do is simply to take the reference point and put it in the beginning, before the conjugation suffix. So it will be Ani lamadeti, Ata lamadeta, At lamadet, Anachnu lamadnu, Atem lamadetem, Aten lamadeten. We can allow ourselves to add an buffer a vowel to make pronunciation a little bit easier. So instead of saying lamadti, we can say lamadeti. Ani lamadeti, Ata lamadeta, At lamadet, Anachnu lamadnu, Atem lamadetem, Aten lamadeten. לזכור, to remember. hu zachar, it's the reference point. Ani ends with T, Ata ends with Ta, At ends with T, Anachnu ends with Nu, Atem ends with Tem, Aten ends with Ten. And we will take the reference point and put it before the suffix. hu zachar, Ani zacharti, Ata zacharta, At zachart, Anachnu zacharnu, Atem zachartem, Aten zacharten. So what we did, we found the reference point, hu zachar, because it follows the sound of the binyan, and then, according to the reference point, we placed it into the templates. We put that into the conjugation pattern. So since ani ends with T, we put zachar, the reference point, plus T. Zacharti, zacharta, zachart, etc. Livdok, to check. hu badak, it was the reference point, we already found it. Ani, as we remember, always ends with T. Ata ends with Ta. At ends with T. Anachnu ends with Nu. Atem ends with Tem. Aten ends with Ten. So hu badak, let's place the reference point into the template. Ani badakti. Ata badakta. At badakt. Anachnu badaknu. Atem badaktem. Aten badakten. Livgosh, to meet. hu pagash, it was our reference point, we already found it. Ani ends with T, Ata ends with Ta, At ends with T, Anachnu ends with Nu, Atem ends with Tem, Aten ends with Ten. So hu pagash, and let's place the reference into the template, and it will become Ani pagashti, Ata pagashta, At pagasht, Anachnu pagashnu, Atem pagashtem, Aten pagashten. Lilbosh, to wear. hu lavash, it was the reference point, and we are doing exactly the same. So let's take the reference point lavash and place it into the template. So ani lavashti, Ata lavashta, At lavasht, Anachnu lavashnu, Atem lavashtem, Aten lavashten. Ligdol, to grow up. hu gadal, and we're doing the same thing. אני גדלתי, אתה גדלת, את גדלת, אנחנו גדלנו, אתם גדלתם, אתן גדלתן. So אני גדלתי, I grew up. אני גדלתי בישראל. לכתוב, to write. הוא כתב, it was the reference point, and we're doing exactly the same. We'll take כתב and place it into the template, and will become אני כתבתי, אתה כתבת, את כתבת, אנחנו כתבנו, אתם כתבתם, אתן כתבתן. Pretty simple, isn't it? As long as we follow the name of the binyan, find the reference point, and then start placing it into the respective conjugations. Third person pronouns conjugation. Let's start with the verb ללמוד, to learn, or to study. הוא למד, it was the reference point. He, so this will be the conjugation pattern. Hey will be always in the form of the suffix, and the vowel standing before it will be an a vowel. And also, let's see what happens. The vowel signs switch places. The patach will go to the third root letter, and the shva, the invisible shva, will go on the second root letter. The root letters did not change their position, just the vowels. So hu lamad, he lamda. hu lamad, he lamda. Hem will have the following conjugation pattern, and we will pronounce this conjugation in 2 syllables. So rather than saying lamadu, which is 3 syllables, lamadu, 3 syllables, we'll pronounce it correctly in 2 syllables. Hem lamdu. So don't make this mistake. Lamadu is a very, very common and bad mistake. Hem lamdu. We're pronouncing this conjugation in 2 syllables. Lamdu. Hen will have the same conjugation. Lamdu. Hu lamad. He lamda. Hem lamdu. Hen lamdu. לזכור, to remember. הוא זכר. He has the same conjugation pattern. The vowels switch places, so the patach will fall on the third root letter, and the shva will fall on the second root letter. So hu zachar, he zachra. We need to keep in mind that just the vowels switch places, not the letters. They will never switch places. Hem in 2 syllables, zachru. Hen, same as hem, zachru. hu zachar, he zachra. Hem, hen, zachru. לבדוק, to check. הוא בדק. He will have the same pattern. Let's switch vowels. So this vowel will fall on the third root letter, and the shva will fall on the second root letter. הוא בדק, he בדקה. Hem, in 2 syllables, will have an u ending, בדקו. Hen, same like hem, בדקו. הוא בדק, he בדקה. הם בדקו. לפגוש, to meet. הוא פגש, this is the reference point. He will have the same conjugation pattern. Vowels switch places, not the letters, just the vowels. הוא פגש, he פגשה. הם, in 2 syllables with an u ending, פגשו, and פגשו. הוא פגש, היא פגשה, הם פגשו. ללבוש, to wear. הוא לבש, this was the reference point. He, same conjugation pattern, vowels switch places. הוא לבש, היא לבשה. הם לבשו, הן לבשו. הוא לבש, היא לבשה, הן לבשו. לגדול, to grow up. הוא גדל, this was the reference point. He, same conjugation pattern. Vowels switch places. גדלה. הוא גדל, היא גדלה. הם גדלו, הן גדלו. הוא גדל, היא גדלה, הן גדלו. לכתוב, to write. הוא כתב, it was the reference point. He will have the same conjugation pattern. Vowels switch places so that patach will fall on the third root letter and the invisible shva will fall on the second root letter and become visible. So הוא כתב, היא כתבה, הם כתבו, הן כתבו. הוא כתב, היא כתבה, הם כתבו. And to wrap it up, let's conjugate all verbs in the past tense by pronouns. Let's start with the verb ללמוד that contains the root letters למד מם דלת and the binyan is פעל. הוא למד, אני למדתי, אתה למדת, את למדת, הוא למד, היא למדה. אנחנו למדנו, אתם למדתם, אתן למדתן, הם למדו, הן למדו. לזכור that contains the root letters זין חפרש and the binyan is פעל. הוא זכר, אני זכרתי, אתה זכרת, את זכרת, הוא זכר, היא זכרה. אנחנו זכרנו, אתם זכרתם, אתן זכרתן, הם זכרו, הן זכרו. לבדוק, to check. בית דלת קוף, the binyan is פעל. הוא בדק, אני בדקתי, אתה בדקת, את בדקת, הוא בדק, היא בדקה, אנחנו בדקנו, אתם בדקתם, אתן בדקתן, הם בדקו, הן בדקו. לפגוש, to meet. פי ג' שין, same בניין. הוא פגש, אני פגשתי, אתה פגשת, את פגשת, הוא פגש, היא פגשה, אנחנו פגשנו, אתם פגשתם, אתן פגשתן, הם פגשו, הן פגשו. ללבוש, the root letters למד בשין, the verb to wear. הוא לבש, אני לבשתי, אתה לבשת, את לבשת, הוא לבש, היא לבשה, אנחנו לבשנו, אתם לבשתם, אתן לבשתן, הם לבשו, הן לבשו. לגדול, to grow up. The root letters are ג' ד' למד. הוא גדל, אני גדלתי, אתה גדלת, את גדלת, הוא גדל, היא גדלה, אנחנו גדלנו, אתם גדלתם, אתן גדלתן, הם גדלו, הן גדלו. לכתוב, to write. The root letters כ' ת' ב'. הוא כתב, אני כתבתי, אתה כתבת, את כתבת, הוא כתב, היא כתבה, אנחנו כתבנו, אתם כתבתם, אתן כתבתן, הם כתבו, הם כתבו. Excellent work, guys. So I hope that you were able to understand everything. Nevertheless, that's it for this lecture. I'm going to see you guys in the next one.